This wrestling company has just entered the 1930s and momentum is finally on our side as we go local to global and mark Northern's Effganic Genesis mod for TEW IX. Things are looking up, and we continue to make huge strides with our shows and finances. But something dark is looming over this company. Welcome back everyone, and thank you for joining us here on The Wham as we continue to unpack the first year of a new decade, 1930, in the world of wrestling. We just came off a massive event and concluded the 5th Derby heavyweight tournament, and we still see Friedrich Herzog, our heavyweight champion. Bronson Fraley's efforts came up short, Elijah Mays got screwed, and Neil Allman got eliminated fairly early. We've got a lot to unpack as we make our way and head to the Frank Norris tribute show, which will be our stopping point for this episode, but we've got quite a ways to go before we even get there. And we've got just a little bit of admin to take care of before we move on into our first event of this episode, Matsuo Hayuata. I hope I'm not butchering that too bad. This man is someone I've had my eye on for quite a while, for a few years technically in game time. And this guy has got elite performance abilities, 94 charisma and microphone, 92 acting, 87 star quality, and he's not too shabby in the ring as well. He is someone staying in Kensai, Japan, but now that we've got into a much better place financially and we are actually profiting each month, I'm going to go ahead and send this man a contract offer, and hopefully he'll accept, and after a few months, a few appearances, he might just move over to the Mid-South and eliminate those travel costs. So we will hear back from him before the next show, hopefully. We do in fact hear back, and he does in fact accept the contract, so I am looking forward to what he can provide for us, though we will have to build up his popularity before his promos are going to tear the roof off of any buildings or any venues. And two of our recent signings, Oscar Kohler and Masked Hammer, have both chosen to relocate to the Mid-South, so hopefully our new sighting, Matsuo, will follow suit as well. But with the admin out of the way, we are ready to get into our next event, the amazing Grappling Spectacle 61. No one's getting the night off. We are in fact going to stay in Oklahoma City like we've been doing. Our booking team meeting, now that we have gotten Barnabas Beef Wellington a few more heads, a few more minds contributing to the greater good, we're getting about 130 creative energy each meeting. Remember that Barnabas gets 0 creative energy due to him having no knowledge of the wrestling industry, but we did add Elijah Mays, who gets us 50, who boosts that total up, and we're able to make a few purchases with our creative energy. Joel Cartwright and August Washburn lifting the locker room morale, and August Washburn, though he doesn't get used in competition, providing reason to keep him on the roster. Hermenegildo Ramirez almost got into a fight with Elijah Mays. We're going to fine him. Mays is pleased. Masked Hammer spreading rumors about Fritz Hattendorf. Another fine brings a small positive impact to our boy Hammer, as well as Fritz Hattendorf. Neil Allman failed to show up for a scheduled meeting. He is a superstar, but we are going to fine him. And everyone is reacting well to it so far. And with that being said, given that everyone is reacting so positively, we do have a poor locker room morale right now, so we can use the hardline stance. I'm going to go ahead and try it. Hopefully no one walks out. Nobody did. Grateful for that, and we're ready to get into the show. It's time to get our next event started, the amazing Grappling Spectacle, and we get the night started off with a pre-show match between Woodrow Gunter and Matsuo Hayuata, and I still am not very confident pronouncing that name. Regardless, we just get a segment rating of 36. Woodrow Gunter comes out with the victory. Matsuo only with an in-ring performance of 22 and gets an awful rating on his gimmick, which is not great, but we want to see what kind of popularity gains we can get this man, and I don't really have great plans for him, or great expectations rather, for him as a wrestler or in-ring competitor, but I do want to see what we can get out of his performance abilities because they are top tier. But to get our actual night started, unfortunately just a segment rating of 27 going down from the 36 in the pre-show match. Riker Zucker, in horrible shape after suffering a guillotine choke at the hands of Elijah Mays at the last event, gets a word with Hermenegildo Ramirez, who believes he deserves another shot at the Junior Heavyweight Championship after Albie Dewberry and Joe Cartwright came up short. Ramirez makes his claim, and Riker Zucker informs him that he is in luck tonight, as the main event is announced as a triple threat that will determine Emilio Suarez's next challenger. Hermenegildo Ramirez would then make his way to the back, and Riker Zucker would then announce that Elijah Mays will not be in attendance this evening as a result of his attack on a staff member at the last event. The crowd is hot and rising, but our segment rating is really poor, so just at 27, but things can only go up, I would assume. And we get a segment rating of 35 with a match between Bronson Fraley and Diego Berrigan. Bronson Fraley picks up a big victory, and this match was designed to tell a specific story, and you could see that Fraley is on his own here in this match. No sign of the Wellington boys as they all were taken away and yet to be seen from after the shenanigans that occurred in the main event of the Spectacle of Amazing Grapples. And if you don't know what that is, then you're going to have to just go watch that last video, I suppose. But we get a segment rating of 35 in this match, Bronson Fraley at 40, and he is just showing an unbridled rage that cannot be contained. The former champion is looking dominant, and it's not that he has this large allegiance, this emotional tie to the Wellingtons, but he is their personal protector, and they are going to be sponsoring his next championship run, so to speak, on the condition that he fulfills that protector role. So he's kind of looking out for himself via looking out for others. Moving on to the next match, we have a 4-man match, free-for-all contest between Neil Allman, Turner Spittler, Sebastian Morales, and Masked Hammer. These 4 were a part of a tag team match at the last event. Now we split them up into this free-for-all match, Neil Allman coming out on top with a great in-ring performance of 56, Turner Spittler at 37, Sebastian Morales way down there at 29, which is actually really disappointing, and Masked Hammer at 38. I'm actually really curious as to what happened with Sebastian Morales, and he was penalized for trying to go all out, and low locker room morale as well, and an uncharacteristic performance for Sir Sebastian Morales, but we just get a segment rating of 39, so not the best segment. But things kick up, and they kick up big, as we get a segment rating of 53 in our final in-ring competition of the night, the main event match of the evening. Albie Dewberry, Joel Cartwright, and Hermenegildo Ramirez duking it out to be determined as the #1 contender for Emilio Suarez's Junior Heavyweight Championship, and Hermenegildo Ramirez would actually be the one to come out on top here. Joel Cartwright and Albie Dewberry would continue this state of trying to one-up the other in these triple threat matches when they are in the ring with the other, and it ultimately becomes a detriment to themselves, and Hermenegildo Ramirez able to capitalize on this little bit of distraction after he pins Joel Cartwright. Albie Dewberry gets called the weak link here for an in-ring performance of 48. That is because Joel Cartwright and Hermenegildo Ramirez are at 58 for this match, so together we get a segment rating of 53, really strong main event from our junior heavyweights, and you know we can count on those boys. We've done matches in this kind of instance rather frequently, but it's because it gets results. And our final segment of the night, not a great segment rating, but it is vital to the continuation of our story. Friedrich Herzog is in the ring. Standing beside him is fresh-faced Oscar Kohler. Herzog is looking stoic and showing no signs of fear as he has enlisted some more backup. The heavyweight champion claims that he was robbed of a proper Derby victory celebration and demands who was ever responsible for the lights going out to show themselves and face the consequences for ruining Herzog's moment. There is no response, though the lights would once again be cut. Commotion filled the venue, and carnival music once again began to play. The lights would return and the music would cease, and Fritz Hattendorf was seen returned at the end of the entrance ramp, though his lifeless body was cause for concern. Kohler and Herzog would quickly aid their ally, and the lights would go out once more, though this time they would not return as the show came to an end. So a little bit of mystery, some intrigue, so to speak, as Friedrich Herzog, looking for a confrontation for those that sabotaged his Derby victory, he gets his backup Fritz Hattendorf back, but questions remain as to what in the world is going on with this Dark Carnival storyline that seems to be advancing. By the numbers, not the strongest end to the show, and the crowd really isn't used to this kind of ending to these shows, but we get a little bit of fanfare, so to speak, for lack of a better term, I suppose. All in all, we get an overall rating of 45, which is not bad, but we have been floating around that area, so we'd like to see some separation, some improvement, but clearly we didn't have the strongest show. We're going to praise Diego Berrigan and Sebastian Morales, and hopefully we can improve their morale, turn things around, and get some better performances out of these two. We do gain $277, and we stay at 26 popularity in the Mid-South. And a little bit of relevant headlines here. Matsuo Heiwata has been voted as the most entertaining wrestler in the world, so that is a good sign for our new pickup with, once again, phenomenal performance stats, though really not great physical stats, as his stamina is going to keep him from doing any kind of great bouts or great matches by any means. And I'm just going to do this now. I genuinely have such a hard time pronouncing his last name. If someone could put in the comments how to actually pronounce his last name, that would be phenomenal. But I'm going to change his name up to the Great Matsuo, and that is just going to make my life a lot easier, and I won't stumble when I'm pronouncing this guy's name in these videos as much. So if you have a problem with it, I'm sorry, but I think it's a good choice for me. And since his gimmick is already considered as awful, we are going to try to tweak it, and we'll see if it helps anything at all. And some more relevant info, SPW's trying to send a contract offer to Woodrow Gunter, but we nabbed that boy to an exclusive contract and he ain't going nowhere as of now. Fritz Hattendorf also has decided to relocate and reside in the Mid-South, so we're no longer paying travel from Germany for Fritz Hattendorf. And in another bit of news that is relevant to our own stories, Elijah Mays, a junior heavyweight by our standards, has won the CWB World Heavyweight Championship. So that is rather interesting. He is also the tag team champion over there at CWB. That man has just taken over in that company, that's for sure. And with no time to waste, we are back in our next event, the Amazing Grappling Spectacle 62. No significant pre-show happenings in our locker room or anything like that, and we get right into a pre-show match between the newly rebranded The Great Matsuo taking on Masked Hammer. Two relative unknowns in America, but they are going at it, and we get a segment rating of 22, with Matsuo with an in-ring performance of 21 and Hammer with an in-ring performance of 31. And you can see that Hammer was really off of his game, but I'm not hating what I'm seeing from Masked Hammer so far, though his inconsistency is starting to peek through. Getting into our show, we have an absolute stinker, as Randy Edson and Turner Spittler do not have any chemistry whatsoever and really put in a poor performance. Randy Edson, in-ring performance of 21, Turner Spittler, in-ring performance of 29, and we were even looking to spotlight Turner Spittler with a dominating performance here, so it is a little unfortunate that this match did not go well, as we only get a segment rating of 22, and the crowd heat is not great. But it does pick up as we get a segment with Woodrow Gunter, as he would take an interview with Riker Zucker. Gunter would admit that his time in the Wham has not started the way he imagined, though he is determined to change things and get back into championship contention. Woodrow Gunter puts over the level of competition in the Wham, and acknowledges becoming champion won't be easy. However, Gunter confesses that he is on a mission for championship gold. So we get a little bit of improvement here, segment rating at 35, the crowd heat is picking up, and Woodrow Gunter, one of our stars, delivers a decent promo. And going from one decent promo to another, we get Albie Dewberry and Joe Cartwright taking part in a strongman competition, in an effort to establish competitive superiority over the other. Albie Dewberry and Joe Cartwright continue to focus on showing up the other, which motivates the competitors to blow the fans away with impressive performances. As the competition went on, the two were neck and neck and failed to create any separation, and would ultimately end their contest in a draw, which would only bring forth more frustration for the two. So I know it's hard to keep up our segments with these two, with our matches between these two, because they are just so good in the ring and so not fantastic in the performance area. Basically, more competition between Albie Dewberry and Joe Cartwright. Think like Matt Hardy MVP kind of vibes. And they're just trying to one up the other. They compete in this strongman competition. We got away from that a little bit, but we're bringing it back for this segment here. And ultimately, we would find no answers. This would end in a draw, and Dewberry and Cartwright continue to struggle to create any separation and truly establish who the best between the two is. And another poor match, and we went with the philosophy of bringing in some of our lower named guys to come in and compete in some squash matches, and it did not pay off. But we would see Elijah Mays dominate Brian Hatcher, and Brian Hatcher is in fact a heavyweight, and Elijah Mays of course is a junior heavyweight, but Elijah Mays makes a statement to the rest of the locker room and shows that he is rather angry with the proceedings that not only happened at the tournament, but the event that followed. So we get a segment rating of 30, not what we're looking for, but not terrible. Brian Hatcher was rusty, but he's probably not going to see some in-ring competition for a while, if I'm being honest. But thank goodness, our next match brings us back up. And this isn't even our main event. We actually have a heavyweight championship match, but we're going to get into that in just a moment. But for now, we get a show-stealing 55 segment rating tag team match between Hermenegildo Ramirez and Neil Allman taking on Emilio Suarez and Sebastian Morales. Now, if you watched the last episode, you would know that Sebastian Morales and Gabriela Suarez are now dating. And of course, Emilio is the brother of Gabriela, so it felt right to pair these two together, and Emilio getting a look at his contender, Hermenegildo Ramirez, teaming alongside one of the top contenders in Neil Allman. And Neil Allman would continue his momentum after pinning the junior heavyweight champion. All four of these guys put in great performances, 59 for Allman, 56 for Ramirez, and 57s for Suarez and Morales. So this match might just propel us into a decent show, but we're gonna have to wait and see. Our next match, the main event, does not pay off with a segment rating of 37. Unfortunate, but Bronson Fraley, in-ring performance of 38, Friedrich Herzog, in-ring performance of 53, and the game would consider this as descending into chaos, and that's not honestly the worst way to put it. And this match would end in a draw, but it was for the heavyweight championship, though it's not listed here. We'll unpack it all in the next segment, which only gets us a segment rating of 30, which is actually really disappointing. But as far as stories go, this is monumental. The lights would once again cut out in the venue, and the ominous carnival music would return. When the lights came back, Bronson Fraley and Friedrich Herzog were baffled at the sight that stood before them. Black Bull and Blue Mage, two men who had been betrayed by Fraley and Herzog in the past, have made their return and have backup present. Herzog and Fraley have nobody to turn to, as Duke Wellington and Oscar Kohler, as well as Fritz Hattendorf, are no longer present ringside. This group of dark individuals would launch an attack on Herzog and Fraley, sabotaging the championship match, but sending a huge message in the process. So we have this heavyweight championship match between Bronson Fraley and Friedrich Herzog that is scheduled to determine a true winner of the Derby basically, though the record books aren't going to acknowledge that in that way. But Bronson Fraley gets a shot back at the heavyweight championship. However, the same kind of shenanigans would come to play. However, we would see the faces behind those shenanigans. We have this new stable called the Dark Carnival, and it consists of Black Bull, Blue Mage, Bryant Hines, and Craig Bean. All outcasts, not only from the roster in general, but from people they thought they could trust. This match is ruled as a no contest. Angus Wellington and Chuck Wellington are still nowhere to be found, but we do know who's behind it. And of course, as stated here, now in this segment, Duke Wellington, Oscar Kohler, and Fritz Hattendorf are once again not present for this beatdown that the Dark Carnival delivers to Bronson Fraley and Friedrich Herzog. So we've got a big moment to end this night. However, it is rather underwhelming on the scorecard and leaving us with a segment rating of 30, giving us an overall show rating of 38, which is rather disappointing. And you can see here once again, these ratings just are not what we got used to, and this philosophy of giving some of our lower card guys some shine in some squash matches did not pay off for us, and we probably will not be going back to that for a little while. However, we do praise Black Bull and Blue Mage. We gained $392 from this show, and our popularity remains at 26. And coming out of the show, we see that SPW have made a contract offer to Dean Grunge, and honestly, Dean Grunge, brother, I don't think I'm going to keep you. I think I'm going to let you go ahead and go over to SPW. Granted, he's still here in the Mid-South. I've got him under contract for just about 5 more months. However, once SPW confirms a contract, he will be property of Southern Pro Wrestling. While he's had some nice performances as of late, and his skills really aren't too bad, I just have not had any kind of direction for him, and I've been feeling that my roster is a little bloated as it is. He doesn't provide anything positive to the backstage atmosphere, so I'm going to go ahead and let him travel over to SPW. And Dean Grunge has in fact accepted that offer to SPW, so what we're going to do is we're going to renegotiate his contract for a 1-month, 1-appearance contract, and I assume he'll accept it, and then he will be exclusive property to SPW. In other news, our product change from the no style to competitive entertainment has concluded, and we should see a bit of an uptick in our popularity increase. And Dean Grunge does accept those terms, and we will be saying goodbye to Sir Dean Grunge. And we are finally ready to go with our next event, the Amazing Grappling Spectacle 63, the last Amazing Grappling Spectacle before the Frank Norris Memorial Show, which happens later on in the month. And in our pre-show match, we've got Joel Cartwright teaming up with the Great Matsuo to take on the Pride, Fritz Hattendorf, and Oscar Kohler. And Hattendorf and Kohler have been freed from the Dark Carnival's clutches, and we would see Joel Cartwright, of course, with a class performance, in-ring performance of 46, Great Matsuo at 19, Oscar Kohler has been rusty. This is his first match in the WAM technically, in-ring performance of 16, and Fritz Hattendorf at 31. This segment rating just gets us 31, largely in part due to Joel Cartwright's very strong performance. Getting into the actual show now, we've got Albie Dewberry in an interview with Riker Zucker, and he makes a formal challenge to Joel Cartwright, one in which that must have a definitive winner, as Albie Dewberry lays the challenge for a submission match at the Frank Norris Memorial Show. Just a quick little segment here, segment rating of 28 to move us along. And we just get a segment rating of 26 despite a strong performance from Woodrow Gunter at 46 and Diego Bergen at 25. The wrestling rating was at 35, but the fans hated the ending to the match, as this is our first event now under the competitive entertainment product. So they didn't like that, and I got bad news for them for later, but we're not going to change it because it's relevant to the story. But we're going to go ahead and move on. And we see Woodrow Gunter actually picking up the win via disqualification after Turner Spittler came and launched an attack on him. And you can see that Turner Spittler takes out Woodrow Gunter, unleashing a relentless onslaught of kicks and strikes as Gunter tries to defend himself. Spittler is unwavering in his attack and never gave Gunter a moment to breathe. Turner Spittler would carry out a heinous attack in front of the crowd, leaving Woodrow Gunter down and in bad shape. So right when Woodrow Gunter is building some momentum, Turner Spittler is coming to screw that all up, and we just get another segment rating of 26. But we do see some things start to improve as we get a bout between Elijah Mays and Neil Allman, a good match, but I must have misclicked somewhere along the line because Neil Allman was the one to be getting the victory here. Gosh dang it, I'm an idiot. I apologize. Please bear with me here, fellas, that Elijah Mays actually takes the loss in a clean effort after Neil Allman picks up the victory. And Neil Allman actually picks up the victory. And so I apologize that I got it wrong here. We do get a segment rating of 44. That is a big improvement from what we've done so far. But I screwed the pooch here, and Elijah Mays actually is not the victor. Because as you can see in this next segment, after a hard-fought match, Neil Allman extends his hand in a show of respect to Elijah Mays, returning the gesture after their last one-on-one match. However, Elijah Mays slaps Neil Allman's hand away and strikes him across the face, where a flurry of fists would then commence. After a small scuffle, Neil Allman would send Elijah Mays out of the ring, who was visibly furious after his loss. Neil Allman was shocked at what had gone down and there is some serious tension between these two. So like I said, forgive me for the user error in that last match, but Neil Allman actually came out victorious here, and we get a segment rating of 55 as Elijah Mays and Neil Allman continue to have issues. Now we get another promo, a poor rating of 21, but we've just got to build some stuff up. In a strange moment with Riker Zucker, the Dark Carnival shows that they have once again captured Duke Wellington. Brian Hines, the speaker of the group, promises a safe return of the Wellington brothers following a, quote, one-on-one conversation with Bronson Fraley in the main event this evening. Poor rating of 21, but Duke Wellington is in the clutches of the Dark Carnival, and they will return him after they have a chance to speak with Bronson Fraley. And we get a big match between Hermenegildo Ramirez and Emilio Suarez. However, due to the ending of the match, we get a big penalty there and we only see a segment rating of 37, despite we would probably get somewhere in the 50s had we not disgusted the fans with our ending. But in short, Hermenegildo Ramirez would be disqualified after Gabriela Suarez would strike her brother Emilio. And this was not in Hermenegildo Ramirez's intentions. But let's go over the numbers really quick. In-ring performances of 53 for Ramirez and 52 for Emilio Suarez. We've already talked about the penalty and the ending to the match, so we will know to avoid that with this new product. And our match just gets a segment rating of 37, but we do have the fallout of the match that gets us a segment rating of 45. During the match, Emilio and Gabriela would constantly bicker at one another, and another inadvertent near miss would send Gabriela into a rage. The ringside manager became more animated and eventually got onto the ring apron and smacked her brother upside his head out of anger. This would cause the ref to call a disqualification on Suarez, ending the match. After Kenny Lyles declared Emilio as the victor, Gabriela had realized what she'd done and began to try to backtrack and talk Kenny Lyles out of his decision, but it was final. Hermenegildo had once again come up short, and he was understandably frustrated while Gabriela tried to apologize. So, Emilio Suarez, in the past few months, in the past few matches, had on multiple occasions nearly missed Gabriela in inadvertent movements that just almost struck her. It was never, intentional, but she took it personally and she did not appreciate nearly getting hit. This happened again, and this time, she was not going to stand for it, and she ended up actually striking her brother, which would cause the ref to call for a disqualification, disqualifying Hermenegildo Ramirez, of all people. So Emilio Suarez kind of shies his way into a title defense, despite there being some serious problems on the surface for the siblings, and we get a segment rating of 45. Now in our main event, we've got a handicap match. The Dark Carnival, Black Bull, Blue Mage, and Craig Bean accompanied by Brian Hines. They dismantle Bronson Fraley. Despite putting up a good fight, they take out the former heavyweight champion. We only get a segment rating of 35, and Black Bull was rather rusty, so he only got an in-ring performance of 24. However, this new faction, this new crew known as the Dark Carnival, this band of misfits, has shown that they mean business and that they are going to cause some serious destruction. And our final segment of the evening, following the beatdown of Bronson Fraley, the Dark Carnival make an ominous notion of a championship belt, with Blue Mage in the front of the group, signaling that they are coming for Friedrich Herzog next. The lights would cut out, and when they returned, the members of the Dark Carnival were gone, but the Wellington brothers were in the ring, petrified and bound together. This left an uncomfortable feeling over the crowd as the show came to an end. Just a segment rating of 25. These are not the most popular of stars yet, but I think they've got a chance to go on a serious ascension. We garnered an overall rating of 41, not bad for a show that was pretty much dominated by workers that are not quite stars yet. We're praising Albie Dewberry and Black Bull. We gained $578 due to some great ticket sales, but we do stay at 26 popularity. And in news around the wrestling world, Queensland Wrestling have officially been declared bankrupt and have gone out of business. RIP Victor Garza's company, but I wonder what kind of shenanigans that man will continue to get into. And Black Bull, Blue Mage, and Albie Dewberry are all annoyed And given that we're making some money now, I'm going to offer some bonuses to try to keep our guys happy. And some significant players, I'm trying to prevent them from getting angry and seeing them walk out on us. However, Dewberry is still annoyed despite the bonus. Black Bull is still annoyed. And Blue Mage is still annoyed. So $500 each was not enough to get these guys in any kind of significant morale improvement, so hopefully nothing goes south for these boys. And we see here that Duke Wellington has risen in weight to 240 pounds after bulking up his muscle mass significantly. Way to go, Duke! Let's go! And given that it is the Frank Norris Memorial Show, of course we're going to inspire the locker room. And they ought to be inspired because it is time for the Frank Norris Tribute Show. Rest in peace, our original owner, Frank Norris. And it is once again time to honor the man that brought us the Wham. And we will honor the man that brought us the Wham with a pre-show match that brings the Tag Team Championships back on the line as Chuck and Angus Wellington take on the Great Matsuo and Wayne Blankenship in a targeted match to give themselves the easiest opponent that they possibly could, so to speak, to the exception of Wayne Blankenship, because I wanted at least some kind of formidable competitor to be involved, but the Great Matsuo is the one that does the JOB here. But we get a segment rating of 24, we do get a successful Tag Team Championship defense from a bewildered, stupefied Wellington brothers that have just been returned from the clutches of the Dark Carnival just last month. Also in the pre-show, we see Bronson Fraley taking a moment to deliver a heartfelt sentiment for Frank Norris in front of the crowd. We know that Frank Norris and Bronson Fraley had a very strong relationship, and Bronson Fraley was truly devastated by the loss of Frank Norris. However, we don't have Bronson Fraley on the card actually, so he takes a moment to remember his fallen friend. Just a segment rating of 37, but the show is gonna get going as we have a no-holds-barred match between Woodrow Gunter and Turner Spittler. And while Woodrow Gunter has been building up some good momentum and has declared himself on a mission for championship gold, Turner Spittler is actually the one that comes out of here with a victory in a very physical, very brutal match. And we get a segment rating of 39 to get this show started. And we get another good match between some junior heavyweights that are very familiar with one another, as Albie Dewberry and Joel Cartwright get a segment rating of 41 in this submission match. However, it is Albie Dewberry that makes Joel Cartwright submit. We get in-ring performance of 41 from Dewberry and 45 from Cartwright, and Albie Dewberry has just won the rubber match, this definitive ending between these two, forcing Cartwright to tap out. We reached our total allotted amount of time for this show, but we do see a shaking of the hands from Albie Dewberry and Joel Cartwright, a sign of respect from these two competitors. And after the match, the lights are cut for a moment, and the now familiar carnival music begins. And when the lights return, Oscar Kohler is found in the middle of the ring, unconscious. Segment rating of 41, and just a little bit of ominous happenings here, and Oscar Kohler, a very large man, gets taken out. In our next match, we get another big match, segment rating of 55, as we have got Elijah Mays and Neil Allman going head-to-head in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And it would in fact be Elijah Mays, the junior heavyweight, to come out on top against Neil Allman in a big moment. And Neil Allman, the former heavyweight champion, taking the loss to Elijah Mays, the real-life MMA legit tough guy who continues to rack up victories over former heavyweight champions, and he is a heavyweight champion himself over an FNP, if I'm not mistaken. It might be CWB, I'm not entirely sure which company it is, but the point is, the man's a heavyweight champion elsewhere, okay? But all in all, segment rating of 55, it ties the greatest match in Wham history. We've now got like 3 or 4 matches at 55, so we got to get over that hump. But either way, a phenomenal match delivered here. After the match, the lights are once again cut, and the carnival music returns. This time when the lights return, Fritz Hattendorf is the one in the ring. So Friedrich Herzog's boys have now been taken out, and he's got no backup. And it makes you just wonder what is going to happen with our main event. And I said we needed to get over the hump of 55, and we do get the hump. And in our junior heavyweight championship match, these two delivered in a big way. Hermenegildo Ramirez with an in-ring performance of 63, Emilio Suarez at 54. We had a creative finish in there, and our segment rating gets us to 57. Now, earlier in the evening, we would see Gabriela Suarez profess her loyalty to Hermenegildo Ramirez and basically denounce the actions of Emilio Suarez over the past few months, stating that she is not going to support her brother any longer in his shenanigans and his nefarious acts. Gabriela Suarez would also accompany Hermenegildo Ramirez down to the ring, acting as his manager. However, she would ultimately cost him, as she would distract him in a crucial moment and in offhanded ways distract the ref at inopportune times for him, though it wasn't totally clear what she was doing until at the very end, when she very clearly was trying to distract and work against Hermenegildo Ramirez. And ultimately, Emilio Suarez would hit a quick cradle on Hermenegildo and secure the 1-2-3, the pinfall victory, and make his 7th defense of the Junior Heavyweight Championship. And we would even get a segment to follow the Suarez siblings celebrate their deception and championship victory, showing that there was no issues between the two from the beginning. It was a swerve, bro. The crowd hisses boos at the siblings as they leave the ring area, with Emilio holding his championship high. Segment rating of 53 as the snaky Suarez siblings continue to celebrate. And then in our main event, we get a segment rating of 40, and you love to see the Dark Carnival come up big in a main event opportunity. This was originally scheduled to be a 3-on-3 tag team match, but as you saw, the members of the Pride were one by one taken out throughout the night. Friedrich Herzog with an awesome in-ring performance at 59. However, the members of the Dark Carnival did not do poorly, with Craig Bean at 35, Blue Mage at 38, and Black Bull at 34. And I can appreciate the segment rating of 40, though it's not the strongest, it's not the best, it's not our biggest main event by any means, but it is a good performance by some guys that may just finally receive a real shot, even if they have to take it. But all in all, the Dark Carnival would come away with the victory. Friedrich Herzog would not be able to overcome the odds. Blue Mage would secure the pinfall, and we would see the Dark Carnival ending the show standing tall and without saying a word, send a huge message to the rest of the locker room. So we got a segment rating of 26 to end us off here. Probably shouldn't have even attached the storyline to it, but it is what it is. Overall rating of 44 for the Frank Norris tribute show. Not a bad showing, and we really did have some good matches, highlighted by Albie Dewberry and Joel Cartwright, Elijah Mays and Neil Allman, Emilio Suarez and Hermenegildo Ramirez just blowing the roof off the building there. And then of course, a decent main event with the Dark Carnival involved. And Black Bull and Blue Mage are both going to get some praise, and hopefully we can eventually turn around their morales. A big $827 profit from this show. We didn't even spend $1,000 on our employees tonight. And we do finally get that bump up from 26 to 27 in our popularity, and not a bad time for it to come after the Frank Norris tribute show. But that is going to be our stopping point for this episode. Thank you to those subscribed to the Real One tier on Patreon. You guys are awesome, and your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone else for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take it easy.